Tonight we have Associate Dean Mark Voigt, who will be joining the conversation and representing physics, and Heidi Purdy, our Director of Undergraduate Studies, both of whom were at the last event we had. We also have four other panelists from different departments within the college, and they can answer your questions on specific areas. I have actually myself had many undergraduate researchers in my research group, and it really is very enriching for us to have undergraduates participate in research. It is also an area where there is funding. So many of the students who worked in my group had a variety of different funding for their undergraduate research experiences, including professorial assistant program funding and also funding from endowments. So our generous alumni have endowed many endowments for research, and each year we provide those fundings for students interested in research. With that, I'd like to introduce Mark Voigt and Heidi Purdy, who will say a few words.
I guess I'll start. I am currently the Associate Dean for Undergraduate Education, and every year I get up in front of our incoming freshman class and talk about how much we want you to try undergraduate research, because maybe you're thinking about perhaps a career in research, and the best way to find out about that is to try research. Sometimes also you try it and you find out you don't like that kind of research and you try something else. And so it's a good way of finding what you actually like, what kind of science you like doing. And that also can lead all sorts of directions. Many of us who are now in the faculty got our start as undergraduate researchers. So I encourage you to keep trying things, maybe different things in undergraduate research, to find out where your passion is in the college. Heidi?
All right, thanks, Mark. So I'm Heidi Purdy. I'm the Director of Undergraduate Studies. And so what I am hoping to welcome you in to do is to also help you understand that research is not only an incredible experience, it's also one that fits very well into your education and how we can fit that into your program. So I would be one of the academic advisors that would help find ways to make the research a critical part of your degree.
So Mark and Heidi, thank you so much. So before we delve into the panel, first I want to tell all of you that you can ask questions. You can use the question and answer feature in Zoom, and just go ahead and type out any questions you have as we go through. We're going to talk about research, why you should get engaged in research, and some possible funding opportunities for research as well. So we'll cover that full range of topics. And undergraduate research, one thing I was going to mention about that is the fact that undergraduate research is so important because it's not just about figuring out, gaining an experience, but it's also figuring out what you like as well as what you don't like. I know when I started my undergraduate studies, I thought for sure I was going to go to medical school, and then I thought I was going to go into business, and then I kept changing my major. But really, it was the internships and research experiences that were so critical to really kind of refining what I wanted to do. And so I think that was so very important. So before going any further, I must tell you, I'm Angela Wilson. I'm Associate Dean for Strategic Initiatives, and I'm also a chemistry professor. And I've had about 150 undergraduate students do research with me. And most of the faculty within the College of Natural Sciences have undergraduate researchers, all the way from freshmen to seniors. And so you can really get engaged at any point of your career and any part of your education. And so you'll hear much more about the reasons to get involved in research from our panelists. So we have 4 panelists tonight, but we've got a lot of faculty throughout the college that are very welcoming of undergraduate students, and so feel free to reach out to them. Tonight we've got with us Tammy Long, who's in plant biology, and shortly I'll ask her to have her introduce herself in a bit more detail. We also have Lynn Marie Posey, who's from the chemistry department. We have Ben Schmidt from the math department, and Steve Zeff from physics. And so now we'll go ahead and go with our panelists. And remember, you can ask questions at any time. Just use the Q&A feature. So I'll start off with Tammy. Tammy, do you want to share a little bit about yourself and perhaps some of your own undergraduate experiences with research?
Sure. Thank you, Angela. Welcome, everyone, and we're really happy to have this opportunity to talk to all of you tonight and hopefully answer some of your questions and concerns about research as an undergraduate. My name, as Angela said, is Tammy. I'm in the Department of Biology. I'm the director of the undergraduate program for that department, and I also am a co-director for a graduate program that is an interdisciplinary program that intersects plant sciences with computational science. I always have undergraduates in my lab doing research, and I've always found them to be a wonderful addition. I'm a huge proponent of getting involved in research as an undergraduate, and I say earlier is better. I think there used to be a way of thinking that research is something that you save as a capstone experience. So you have to get some coursework under your feet first before you're ready to take on a research project. But I think that's absolutely misleading and not true. I think getting involved in research early is a wonderful thing to do. You have to set your sights appropriately for what you might be actually doing in those early experiences. But I think getting involved with a lab early is a great way to get to know the university better. I think it's a good way to get to know colleagues and professors and build a network early on. And as you have heard and probably will continue to hear, a great way to start learning what you like and what you don't like. What do you feel competent? What are you excited about? And also, equally important is to find out what things you don't necessarily like. Absolutely, undergraduate research was an important and transformative thing for me in my own progression. Like Angela, I started off believing that I was going to be a physician. That was the only thing that I had ever really considered. At the end of my sophomore year in undergraduate, though, I met these two amazing and exciting faculty that had come into my institution and were talking about chasing birds through the rainforest in the tropics. And I couldn't think of anything more exciting that somebody could do. So I just walked up to them after a seminar that they gave and said, this is, I was all nervous and flustered and everything, and said, this is just so cool. I can't imagine actually doing this. And they said, well, then why don't you join us next year when we go to Costa Rica? And I ended up spending 3 months in the rainforest radio tracking birds and believing that that was what I was going to spend the rest of my life doing. Long story short, I don't study birds anymore, but I have earned my PhD for work in plant research, and now I'm actually studying learning and cognition. So I'm doing a little bit of work on brains now at this point. So research changes and your interests change, and there's not always a clear-cut pathway, but you kind of meander around until you find projects that are interesting to you, science that excites you, and you find your right fit. So I think that's enough about me.
Tammy, great. Thank you. How about you, Lynn Marie?
Hi, I'm Lynn Marie Posey. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Chemistry, and I'm undergraduate director in the department. And I can honestly say without undergraduate research, I wouldn't be here at MSU because like Tammy and Angela, I went off to college thinking that I was going to be pre-med and I was going to become a physician. And during my freshman year, I met some older students in the chemistry department, and they introduced me to the research that they were doing, and that motivated me to go talk with one of the faculty members. And I was just a freshman, and he was very open to having me join his group. And so starting fall of my sophomore year, I started doing some work on gas phase phosphorescence spectroscopy. And I did that for my sophomore year and summer after my sophomore year. And then my advisor went on sabbatical. And so it was like, oh no, what am I going to do? Because by then I had caught the research bug. And so I went and I talked to another faculty member, and I ended up doing some organic synthesis. And one of the great things about having a variety of undergraduate research experiences is that you find out what you like, what you don't like. You also find out what you're good at and what you're not as good at. And I learned that I did not have a real talent for doing organic synthesis. So that was not what I studied in graduate school. And I did my graduate research in experimental physical chemistry using laser spectroscopy and mass spectrometry. I'm another example of somebody whose research career has evolved over time. I now am working in the area of chemistry education research. And in particular, I'm interested in how students learn and use mathematics in the context of chemistry. And I'm really excited to see so many people joining us tonight.
Thank you, Lynn Marie. Ben, how about you?
Hi, everybody. I'm really glad. 116 participants. That's awesome. I was going into university as a freshman in 1996. I had no idea about research or undergraduate research. I grew up in a small town in Jackson, Tennessee. If anyone's heard of it, it's between Memphis and Nashville. 50,000 people. If you were a talented student, when you went to college, you were going to become a doctor. We've heard a lot about that, or a lawyer. So I was thinking I was going to be a doctor, much like Angela, Lynn Marie, and Tammy. And I took some of the introductory science classes my first year as an undergraduate at Emory, which is a school in Atlanta. It was my second year that I got a research experience in mathematics. And I went to an REU, which stands for Research Experience for Undergraduates. They're funded programs, typically by the NSF now, National Science Foundation. That sent me to Oregon State University for a few weeks in the summer, where this experience happened. And that was my first taste of research, and I loved it. And I got a problem to study to what extent you can uniquely reconstruct images from a few X-rays, point X-rays. So it's sort of an applied mathematics problem. I should have said I'm in mathematics. I'm an associate professor in mathematics. I'm the co-director of undergraduate studies in mathematics. So this program was concerning mathematics research. And yeah, it was wonderful. Like it really turned me into math. I, from that point on, knew I wanted to keep pursuing math. That was the turning point in my academic career. I'm still working on that research problem. I still don't know how to solve the problem I was given in 1998. So research can be a journey. It's something that just keeps feeding you and gives you an opportunity to keep learning in a very active way. So I'm glad to see everyone here, and yeah, that's me.
Thank you so much, Ben. And I just wanted to jump in and say that if any of you are thinking about medical school, don't let this scare you. It's just, you know, some of us just discovered that, you know, we had all these other different, you know, much different interests. I had the opportunity to do a summer internship at Department of Energy Laboratory at Hanford Nuclear Reservation. And I was just, you know, I started doing work in theoretical chemistry, and I just love the mix of chemistry and math and physics and computer science. And so that's what I stuck with. And so you just never know, you know, even if you're really firmly committed that you're going to go into a certain area, I encourage you, MSU's got so many opportunities to be open-minded and just really pursue your dreams, begin to explore, and research is a great way to do that. So Steve, do you want to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about, you know, undergraduate research in general?
Yeah, I'm Steve Zeff. So I'm a professor in the Department of Physics and Astronomy. I'm also the chairperson now. I'll say a few stories. So I personally never intended to go to medical school. I have actually had undergraduates working with me doing research who have gone on to medical school from the Department of Physics and Astronomy doing some astronomy. They were astronomy majors as undergraduates. So one of the things I was going to say is there are a lot of different paths. And I mean, it's sort of, you want to figure out what you're doing. You want to have a path. You probably, if there are parents on here, you probably want to know your sons and daughters know what they want to do. But realistically, between 18 and as old as we are, there's a long time. A lot of things happen, including people majoring in astronomy going to medical school, and people coming into the college thinking they want to go to medical school and finding other things they want to do. And so it really is an argument for just sort of trying to look around and following things that you think are interesting, look like they might be promising, and seeing where they go. I, for example, didn't do undergraduate research until my senior year. I did a lot of different things. I got sort of good at poker, among other things. I worked as an engineer one summer. And then I did do research senior year in a lab in physics, and discovered I really didn't like nuclear physics, which is ironic since I ended up at Michigan State, which has the largest, sort of most prominent nuclear physics program in the country, with a whole bunch of wonderful colleagues. Some of you on this call might end up working with them as undergraduate researchers. But I really didn't like doing that. And so having figured out some things I didn't like doing, I sort of thought astronomy and astrophysics seemed like an interesting area of physics to go into. So I went off to graduate school in that without even really ever having done it before. And then discovered I really liked it. And I have the picture of the SOAR telescope in my background. That it's where I do some of my research. So I remember, I wasn't even until I was in graduate school that I'd ever been to a research telescope, and went and thought, oh, this is cool. It's the same sort of thing. People are paying me to go out to these mountains in like the Andes or in Hawaii and use these giant telescopes. And this is actually a job. Well, then I thought that was fun. And so that's how I ended up doing it. But it can often be a long path. That was the sort of personal part. The Department of Physics and Astronomy is a big department. We have lots. I don't know if anybody's quite got up to 150 undergraduates like Angela, but there are a lot of undergraduates doing a lot of different things, including over at FRIB, NSCL, nuclear physics, but in astronomy and in a lot of other areas of physics. And often when you start, you don't really know what you're doing, and so you sort of start off on the ground floor, so to speak. And there's a lot about how do you do it. I think I want to speak for other departments. In our department, talking to the academic advisors, Stuart Tessmer, is one way to start. You can also just start. I mean, it sounds a little bit whatever, but you can cold email or call, or when we're on campus, knock on doors. It is. People understand. I mean, you will get some, I'm sorry, I can't quite do it now, is off and on, but people understand that you're out there looking around, and I'm pretty sure nobody will be mean to you for asking. And everybody will appreciate your interest. And then you find something, and as we heard, it might not be your first love, or it might be, and then you keep walking, or basically walking around until some things really click.
So thank you, Steve. I know there's a lot of questions that are popping up, and we're definitely going to answer them, but not every, and it sounds like some of you already know that you're interested in research, but I know that there's also some students that are joining us that are like, oh, what is all this research about, and why should I do it? And we've already touched a little bit on why, but I'm just wondering, I'm going to start with you, Lynn Marie, if there's more that you want to add in terms of why research is important, why doing undergraduate research is important.
Doing undergraduate research is a way of actually, engaging in the work of doing science and really having an authentic experience. And I know from, talking with undergraduates that have worked with me that it makes their coursework more relevant, that allows them to see connections with what they're learning in their classes to research. And it's really exciting to work on a problem that, the answer isn't known. So it's very different from, say the typical lab experience that you would have in the context of a course where, usually the experiment's being done, somebody has done them before and they know the answer, but doing research is really, there's this element of discovery, which is really, truly exciting.
So Ben, would you like to add to that? Or if there's anything more you'd like to add to that in terms of, why would you want to do undergraduate research?
I mean, I made notes before this meeting, and I also wrote down, I used the exact same word, authentic learning experience. You get to really experience what it's like in that field. So I'd like to second what Lynn Marie said. I think on a practical note, and this doesn't really have so much to do about learning, but about your trajectory in your career. At some point when you finish college, you'll be asking professors to write letters of recommendation. And so on a very practical note, if you were doing a research experience with faculty members, they will get to know you very well, and they can write detailed letters of recommendation for you. So I think it can really help your career progression in that sense. And to me, research is an opportunity for learning that's not just sitting down and reading a book or listening to a lecture. When you're researching and you get stuck on something, because there's a lot of time that you're stuck and you don't understand what's going on and you're trying to figure something out. That's a time that you start thinking creatively and reading other papers and learning, because you feel very motivated to learn now. You know, it gives you a sense of motivation because you're working on a problem that you want to solve. And so, you know, that gives you the motivation to go and find new material to learn, new tools to help you solve the problem. So I think it's a great way to learn.
So thank you, Ben. And I just want to echo, you know, that the research, learning, and experience is amazing, but I want to echo what Ben said about the detailed letters. You know, I was the head of an undergraduate internship program for about 13 years. And so by the time I left my previous university, we had about 350 applications a year for about 8 positions. And so that was almost 1,000 letters of reference that I got to go through every year. And there's a big difference in terms of letters. Most of the letters would say, oh, this student is great, one of the better students in my class. And there's a big difference between those types of letters when you're trying to find a job or get into graduate school or medical school versus the letters that say, you know, this was not only a great student in my laboratory, I mean, in a class, but they also worked in my laboratory and they accomplished this and that. And, you know, to really have that relationship with a professor, and it's a relationship for life. It really is. It's someone who you'll be getting letters from throughout your entire career if you stick in that research group for a while. It's really great to have that person you can always kind of rely on, kind of your first real long-term mentor. And it's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. So Steve, would you like to expand on why to consider undergraduate research?
I think a lot of it said a lot of these things. I would just, for me personally, what people said about it's not just an answer that's already in the book. That was just really fun for me to realize that you were doing something where the answer wasn't really known yet. And ultimately, that's why those of us here doing math and science are doing it. So having that experience was a lot of fun. That was a little bit later on. It's just a way to find other people at both other undergraduates. Somebody mentioned meeting other more senior undergraduates. There are people who can help you out, like just even like, what class should you take? You might want to talk to somebody who's already done that, right? Well, it gives you a way to experience the people on campus a little bit differently. And then of course the mentoring, but also you don't even have to learn just from the professor. There's all the other people in the lab that you can learn from. And in fact, if you like the lab, it's probably because you like the other people working there. And that's just one of the ways it goes. And if it just so happens they're not all your best, then you probably eventually look around and find a different lab. But then that's easier once you've gotten in. And so it's a really way to broaden your experience. It gives you, and being on a college campus gives you a much better opportunity. It's an opportunity to do that you don't get otherwise.
Thank you, Steve. And there's so much more to learn about the sciences outside of what's in the classroom. It's just remarkable how much we don't know about science, and the opportunity to research and explore is just, it's a wonderful, wonderful experience. And it teaches you to be really inquisitive. I mean, you may think you're really inquisitive now, but it really aids and sharpens your problem solving skills, which is something that is important whether you go to medical school or whether you decide to become a professor or go into business or anything you do. It's really useful. So Tammy, would you like to address this, or have we got it all?
I think that there have been some great points that have been raised, so I don't disagree with anything that's been stated already. I think I'll just add on one idea and maybe embellish on another. But in addition to just doing the science, which was something that was brought up, I think that the students that take advantage of research opportunities also get to see how science actually works. So it's not quite the same as doing the science. You definitely will do the science, but it kind of is an opportunity to kind of lift the veil on the mystique of what science actually is and how it actually operates. We live in a very curious time at this moment, and there's a lot of misrepresentation about what science is, what scientists do, and how the process works. So I think that this gives you an insider's perspective on the process. You'll see what things actually look like. The part that I wanted to pick up on and embellish a little bit more is this notion of the people in the network. I've been really lucky so far at State that the people that I've brought into my lab, the undergrads that we've had in the combination with the graduate students and postdocs, I have never been disappointed in my group. And the friendships that we have made, the connections that we've made within our groups have in fact been lifelong connections. I maintain contact with the undergrads that I had when I first came here, even pre being an actual faculty member. So in fact, 2 of them are now married, and I've had 2 marriages out of my lab so far. But the connections that I have with those students, they are like family to me. They're like my kids. So I have had the privilege of watching them go on and pursue their lives, and the great honor of having them maintain contact with me, and we keep in touch and we know what's going on with each other. These are lasting relationships. So in addition to the professional advantage that you'll get from having this kind of a connection, I think there's also a lot to be said about personalizing this relationship that you can develop through these research opportunities. It doesn't always happen like that. It's true that not every lab works out like that, but when it can, it's actually a wonderful thing. And those faculty that I told you about that dragged me through the rainforest, I still maintain contact with them. I talk to them several times every year. So they're still closest friends of mine. So I think that that's really powerful for me.
Great, thank you, Tammy. So I'm going to move on to, because there's a lot of questions about, can we get engaged in research now? When can we get engaged in research? And so first of all, I just wanted to mention that, you know, you can certainly get in research at any point, but there's a lot of times to try to maximize, you know, when you should get involved. And what I mean by that is, if you're starting, you know, if you're starting and you're finding that, wow, my classes are really taking a lot of time, and you don't really think that you should be maybe spending 10 hours a week or X number of hours a week in research, make sure you don't do research until you can really commit to it. And so what's most important is your classes, period. It's really important that you do well in your classes. And so that should be, I always believe that's first and foremost. But if you have time to do research, certainly do it. And you know, others may have different perspectives. I'm going to turn to Ben first in terms of, you know, when should folks do research? When should they start thinking about it? Should they do it throughout their whole time? Oops, you're muted.
I'm sorry. I don't have a great answer to this question. I think it really depends on the individual student when they feel like they're ready to engage in research. If you feel like you're ready, then try to jump in. And I think you'll be able to find opportunities where you can do something meaningful, even though you may not have all of the requisite background. You may be in a team where other members can help you fill in gaps, and that can be useful. If you don't feel ready, or you just feel like you're overworked with your classes, then I think, like Angela was saying, maybe it doesn't make sense to jump in at that point. So I don't have a definitive answer for this. I really think you need some flexibility, and it really depends on the student.
So Steve, I don't know if you have more to add on this point.
Yeah, it's also, I think everybody will understand it actually, if you start on something and then all of a sudden classes are getting a little harder than you thought they would, you really, often students hesitate to go into the office and say, I've got to back off. I really got to focus on my classes. But the reality is that faculty members are always understanding about that. So you can go ahead and get started. And if you're a little overcommitted, nobody will, I mean, it's perfectly fine to just back off for a little while. And it really is not a problem. because it's hard to predict. It's hard to predict sometimes. It's hard to predict exactly how your life's going to go that semester, that year. So you can jump in and then just reassess if there's things that are a little bit too much. It's really okay to do it that way.
Right. And many advisors are very flexible in terms of, and you can work with them. In fact, if it's a week where you've got a lot of tests, okay, maybe you won't go in as much. And then a time where you don't have so many assignments, then you spend more time in the lab that week. So there's a lot of flexibility in that, at least with most advisors. So Tammy, I don't know if you want to, say anything more on this point.
I don't really have much to add.
Okay. Yeah.
The only thing I'd say is, on the issue, don't misinterpret what Ben meant by being ready. Be ready in terms of your time available to commit, but don't feel like you have to have mastered some set of skills before you start researching. I think a lot of faculty expect undergrads are going to come in and need some training. Don't be shy about that. So we all know that people are going to come in and you're going to learn a lot when you start working. So don't feel like you have to have accomplished some tier of achievement before you can, approach someone about doing research.
Tammy, thank you. And that is so important. I've heard many undergraduates say, oh, well, I want to take this class first or do this first and learn this first. No, faculty will take you wherever you're at, and they work with you, and the graduate students that are in the research groups work with you. Everyone starts at a different level. Everyone has weaknesses, everyone has strengths. And so, we just work with those. So Lynn Marie, I don't know if you'd like to add more to this.
So the thing that I would say is take some time to sort of look around at the research opportunities that are available, because I think the most important part of getting started in research is finding something that you're really excited about. And once you've done that and you've made the connection with the research advisor, then they will help you fill in the background. In my life as an experimental physical chemist, I often found that you could get students started on doing experiments and worry about filling in the background as they were doing experiments. And it's sort of nice to be able to get some of that hands-on experience in the lab, because then once it comes time to sort of fill in the background, it's actually more meaningful, and it's easier to pick up the background to support the experimental work that you're doing.
Great, thank you. So we also have some questions about basically how do we get involved in research? How do we figure this out? And I'd like to first of all talk about how to get engaged at research at MSU. And Steve, would you like to start that?
Yeah, I've said a little bit before. I mean, I think this probably varies a little bit by area, department, and things like that. For physics and astronomy, a good resource to start is our academic advisor, Professor Stuart Tesmer. But it really is okay to cold call, cold email faculty, just whose website or some other way might get you attract your interest. And even if that doesn't work out, they might suggest a few other names. I mean, it's sort of like the rest of life. It might require a little bit of continuing to keep asking. But even there's a lot of concern I noticed in the Q&A. Things are obviously a little bit harder now with COVID. And I think that is true, but there are still things going on. The labs are they're somewhat restricted, but they are open. And we're trying to get the campus observatory open by fall. So things are restricted some, but there's still a lot going on. And I think you can ask remotely even without knocking on doors, which would be a little bit less effective and not really exactly what we might want right now, just by emailing and maybe eventually phone calling.
Great, thank you. Tammy, how about, what do you recommend in terms of routes for folks to get engaged?
I agree with Steve. I think that when students ask me this, I tell them start reading web pages and read about the research projects that different faculty do. And just to reinforce what Steve said, find out what is interesting to you, what piques your interest. And if they're in their lab, not when I say this, but like 15 minutes before I logged in for this meeting, I had an email from a student that took my class last fall and asked me if I had any research opportunities open right now in my lab. So I will follow up with her and we'll set up a time to talk about her interests and see what her career path is, what she's planning and what she wants to accomplish, and see if we have a fit. So don't be shy about reaching out to faculty. The worst that can happen is that they don't answer you. So then you just keep emailing others and move on. I'm assuming that you guys will talk about some of the formal resources available to students, like the websites, and I'm blanking on the name of the tool where students could search for opportunities open on campus through the college.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, great. So Lynn Marie?
So to follow up on what's been said about contacting faculty directly, by email, I would say be persistent. If there's a faculty member who's doing research that you're really interested in, there are a number of ways that you can follow up if you don't get a response to email, because I know from experience I've got colleagues that don't respond to email, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not interested. And so reaching out to academic advisor in the department or the undergraduate director is a way to follow up, because I know I'm happy to contact a colleague if a student is interested in doing undergraduate research to help facilitate the connection. So if there's something you're really interested in doing, be persistent.
So Ben, would you like to follow up?
I'd like to second that. I would encourage students to reach out to the undergraduate director of the program. They're probably the most likely person to know what the kind of research is going on in the whole department. They can probably pair students in terms of interest with faculty that have similar interests. I'd also like to second something Lynn Marie had said earlier about take a little time to shop around. So, it's important, I think, to meet with these faculty and have some time around them to get a sense of their personality. Research can be very difficult and frustrating at times because you spend a fair amount of time not knowing what's going on or understanding. And so it's really great to have a supportive mentor when you're feeling frustrated. So, yeah, but I think for me, at least in the math department, start with the undergrad director.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I mean, well, and you can certainly do and I encourage everyone to do the initial exploration, especially now that most of us are sitting at home. The websites for most of the departments are quite good. And so you can just go to the chemistry department or physics department or math or whatever department, plant sciences. You can go to these websites and it'll list all the faculty. And for each professor, it lists, most of the web pages talk a little bit about some of the research going on. This does not mean this is all the projects they have going on. Most faculty have a lot more in terms of what kind of work they do. And, I encourage you to, you can certainly reach out to the undergraduate advisor, but you can certainly email the faculty member directly as well. And, typically faculty during the summer are traveling a lot and it might be hard to get a hold of them. Not this summer. And so this is a really great time, if you want to start exploring, and you can email a professor and just say, hey, I'm a new student. I read a little bit about your work. I'm really interested in it. Could I possibly, are you having virtual group meetings? Most of the faculty have research groups. And what you can do then is you can, often they'll let you join the research group. And so you can kind of see the dynamics of the group. They talk about research projects or papers they've read, and it gives you a little bit of a sense of the group before you kind of make a real commitment to joining the group. Now, in terms of opportunities, there's some questions in terms of, so what would I do exactly in terms of undergraduate research? You know, this is not just kind of washing beakers or washing, you know, just doing cleanup in the lab. I mean, these are real projects. And so I don't know if any of you panelists would like to address that point in terms of kind of what do you do in the research lab as an undergraduate researcher? Tammy, do you want to start off with that one?
I would say that that's probably really variable.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, it's gonna be wildly ranging. That some faculty, there's also a range in the way that faculty will engage you or that the lab will engage you in a particular project. So often many labs will have ongoing projects. So the first thing then an undergraduate might do in the lab would be to contribute to an existing project. It might be managed by a graduate student or by a postdoc. And so the undergrad would be assisting on that project. This is a great opportunity for you to learn the skills of the lab, to learn how the lab works, to learn the nature of the data that they interact with, the techniques that they use. And depending on the faculty member and on your expectations and your interests, you might then work with the PI or work with members of the lab to develop something that is your own. You might then develop a proposal together that would give you an opportunity to be a leader in the type of research that you're interested in and get the support of the lab to facilitate that. So your project might be aligned with the interests of the lab, but it would be something that you have ownership of yourself. But honestly, I think there's probably as many ways of thinking about how undergraduates get started in a lab as what there are different labs that you could be involved in. Every lab kind of has their own culture and their own way of bringing new students into their fold.
So I wanted to add also that, I mean, what you'll find is that the projects are meaningful. We have many undergraduates who are published authors with their work published in top scientific journals, and that's a big deal. And that's something that kind of sticks with your resume throughout your career. And so, you know, it is definitely meaningful research in which students are engaged. Lynn Marie, would you like to address more in terms of, you know, just types of projects that students might get involved in?
So I think it, as Tammy said, it really depends on the research that is going on in a particular lab. So I can I'll try to give some examples from chemistry. So in chemistry, a significant number of my colleagues are involved in synthesis. So they're making molecules. So in that case, an undergraduate might get started working on a project to synthesize maybe a potential drug target. And typically in organic labs, an undergraduate would be teamed up with a graduate student or a postdoc to learn the techniques. They might be working on some part of this synthetic project. There are other labs in chemistry that do experimental work involving instrumentation. Typically in that situation, an undergraduate would be working with a graduate student or a postdoc, because often if the experiments involve expensive instrumentation, it's shared equipment. And so there are multiple people that are using the same experimental apparatus. I have colleagues such as Angela who do theoretical and computational work. And so that involves doing work on computers. And I think, it varies whether students are working independently, undergraduates are working independently, or whether, they're teamed up with a more experienced researcher. I do education research, and so a lot of the work that we do involves looking at student work and going through a process called coding to characterize student work. So it's really, there's a lot of variety in what you might be doing for research, and the exact nature of the activities that you would be involved in really, it will vary depending on the type of research and what is happening in the particular lab at a given time.
Thank you, Lynn Marie. And one thing I wanted to make sure to mention is the fact that, in high school, you have a chemistry class, a physics class, a biology class, but what happens in university is that it's much more melding of areas when you're doing research. Because there was a question about, I'm interested in physics, I'm interested, but I really would like to know what math research is like. There are people who do work in theoretical physics, which is a combination of very advanced mathematics and physics. And so we've got most areas are fairly interdisciplinary like that. So you're getting skills in not just one area. It kind of comes from multiple different areas where you need to have experience, where you gain experience in. Sorry. And so, Ben, would you like to talk about some of the types of research that goes on in math?
Oh, it varies so much, and because we know so little, and there's so much to try to figure out. But it varies from individual research that a student may just do on their own, and also group-based research. Unlike, I think, most areas in College of Natural Science, we don't have labs. So the work really involves paper, pencil, computers, modeling. So students with less experience, they tend to start off on very concrete problems where they're asked to compute specific examples that will serve as examples to guide future theory. More advanced students that have been through that process will tend to focus more on more theoretical sort of problems. And then the type of problems that arise can be from very applicable problems, like we had research going on hockey analytics, to very sort of obtuse topics like computing algebraic K groups. So there's just a huge range.
Thank you, Steve.
I don't have a whole lot to add, so I'll really build on the huge range. Across the whole College of Natural Science, even in our BPS building, there's people doing molecular biology, and there's people doing theoretical physics, and within the Department of Physics and Astronomy, it's a big department. It includes the nuclear physics, all of that. I mean, not all of FRIB, but we have lots of connections to FRIB, and we have a lot of undergraduates working over there. But also then there's me and Professor Voigt using the telescopes in space. So the breadth is really pretty remarkable. It's it's sort of something notable about Michigan State is we really do a lot of this research in a lot of different areas, which I think provides opportunities. If you may think now, this is sort of the old person's advice. You may think now you know exactly what you want to do, but that might not really be what you like doing a few years from now. And there's a lot of possibility to move around within the college because there's so many different things going on. If it turns out, I'll just slam on mathematicians for a while. If it turns out sitting in your room working on a math problem, banging your head trying to solve it and not get anywhere isn't your idea of fun, but then you actually discover that working in a lab and getting something to work with your hands really is great, then you can do that, right? You can the college covers that whole variety. Sorry, Ben.
We get to sometimes do our research while taking hikes in the woods.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. You never know when you're gonna come with your right idea, right? On a long bike ride, and suddenly it hits you. Yeah, that's right. So, but I think the point being that the college is really does a lot in a lot of different areas, and so and that's one of the reasons it's hard to answer these questions in detail, because a molecular bio lab works a lot differently than a theoretical chemist research group.
And that's really a great way, a great reason to contact professors. And when you can email them and just say, hey, I've read a little bit about your research online or wherever, and I'd like to know a little bit more about what you're doing. Can you tell me about what you do? And can you tell me what a freshman or new student in your lab might work on? And so, and that you'll begin to see what the different possibilities are in terms of different labs. And just because you go see a professor does not mean that you have to be committed to work with that professor. They're happy to talk with you about their research. Okay, so it's really fine to go in and chat with them. I know I mentioned a little bit about this before, all of us have, but there's some more questions that have come in terms of how do we find out about a research opportunity? So for, certainly one thing you can do, as we've already mentioned, is to look at the different professors' websites, go to the departmental website in the College of Natural Science, go to the departments and look at those opportunities. And Heidi and Mark, I don't know if you want to touch on some other routes for finding opportunities on campus. I know there's a handshake is an approach. I don't know that much about it, but it's a new option. I don't know if either of you have more to add.
Well, Handshake is a place where you can find some of the opportunities. It's a platform where sometimes jobs are posted that professors want filled by an undergraduate. So the things can be found there. The majority of the professors I know about don't go through that mode. And sometimes they are more impressed by an undergraduate who has sought them out in particular and can articulate why they want to work in that lab than the people who are answering an ad. So there's something to be said for just knocking on doors because it's a way of expressing interest.
I would agree.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I think there was a delay in the audio here. I was just going to say, sometimes I work with students and it feels really like a lot to go up to a professor and ask for what you want. So one of the tips I often give students is actually ask the professor for an informational interview. That doesn't feel so much like you're asking them to do something as much as you're learning about their research. And so I think that that's a great method to say, oh, wow, I really am interested. Can I, sit down and just do an informational interview? I'd love to learn more about your pathway. And that's a great way, as some of our panelists have mentioned, you can get the feel for that professor and how, their passion translates into research. And so you can start to see, does this really fit for you? And then I always like to say, at that point, you can ask, can I follow up by coming to your lab? Can I follow up by joining a group meeting and just kind of almost ingratiating yourself into that arena if that's a fit? If not, then say, thank you so much. I've learned so much. And then go on to the next informational interview if you found that that's maybe not the fit for you. And then you can go on to that next thing. So I think that that's a great way that sometimes there's just a little bit more comfort there instead of just walking up and asking, hey, can you give me something? You're only asking for a little bit of their time to start out with.
I'll just add one thing to that. It is sometimes the case that the research leader can't, offer you something right now, but if you've made an impression that lasts, sometimes they'll come back in 6 months and say, I have something for you now. That happens quite a bit. You knock on doors and meet people and express your interest. They remember you later. And yeah, that happens.
So Lynn Marie, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I was just going to follow up. When contacting faculty, don't send generic email to a lot of faculty. It's much more impressive to faculty if it looks like you've taken a little bit of time to learn about what they're doing. That really goes a long way in sort of opening doors, because that conveys that you have some interest and you've taken some time to find out about what they're doing.
Thank you. So a question, actually, Heidi and Mark, would you like to talk a little bit about, possible getting credits for research, different ways to get credit, and any of you then touch on, different ways to, unpaid, paid research opportunities, fellowships, scholarships for research. Heidi, maybe you would like to start that?
Sure, absolutely. So all of our programs in natural science actually have opportunities to earn credit for research. And this could be as simple as you get into a research position and then you talk to your faculty and say, hey, is this a possibility that you'd sponsor me and be my research supervisor within credits? Your academic advisor will be able to help guide you to that. That sometimes also can be a part of the academic advising relationship when you go and ask about research or you ask about credits or experiences. So you absolutely can do that. Those credits then do apply to the degree, whether it applies to a specific requirement or sometimes it's a part of a capstone experience. So later on, if you've had research for a while, they'll have that count towards some of those upper level senior type of experiences. And then sometimes it enters into more of the realm where you have a list of classes that you can choose from and get those further experiences within areas of the degree. So that's a great opportunity to do that. I also did want to mention though, that there's ways to get credits outside of the college as well. So for students that are in the Honors College, there's a fantastic research seminar that takes place typically in the freshman and sophomore year. It's UGS 200H, and they actually work to get students placed in labs and give them research experience as well as credits as you go along. The other nice thing is that research does happen everywhere. So when people think of research and science, that goes hand in hand. But if you have other areas of research, we have lots of our students that go into other colleges and get research experience. So we've had students go into, if they're interested in being a doctor, going into the public health department and the epidemiology department and doing research there, or those that have interest in neuroscience or cognitive studies may go over to linguistics and look at neurolinguistics or psychology. So there's a lot of related things that you can do not only in the college, but also out of the college. So those are great opportunities, and all of which you can definitely apply and get research credits for.
Thank you, Heidi. Well, and certainly there's interest in how do I get paid to do research? I'll start off by telling you that most of the undergraduate students in my lab do not get paid until the summers. If they've been working in my lab during the year, then I try to find, there's often fellowship opportunities that they can apply for through the university, through the college, as well as through some of the departments. But during the year, many professors do not pay undergraduates to do research. So that may differ from research group to research group. You often have to prove yourself first for some of those opportunities. And Heidi, I don't know if you want to add more in terms of some of the paid opportunities or fellowships, or Mark, if you would like to. Mark.
Right. There are a small number of fellowships that or scholarships that we offer during fall semester and spring semester in the summer that pay undergraduates to work in labs. It's a competitive application process. You write, what your research project is, and it gets reviewed. So the college does have some capacity to pay people who are, working on good research projects. Other than that, it's up to the lab leader whether they have grant money to devote to that purpose, but there is some college funding available.
Would anyone else like to add?
I did want to also add that getting funding for research. Oh, sorry, I think I'm having connection issues again. No, I just wanted to add that research credits and getting paid for research are not mutually exclusive. Students can get paid and earn credits. So it's not a situation that you have to choose one or the other, which is really nice for our students to be able to gain in both directions.
Great, thank you. So we have a lot of questions, and some of them are about COVID. And can we do research now in terms of COVID? A couple of students, it sounds like, have reached out to faculty and they're not finding spots right now. Part of that is right now, undergraduates overall are not on campus doing research right now. And so it's just this unusual time in terms of COVID. However, there's no reason why you can't reach out. There's some professors who are still allowing, lining up people to work with them in the fall. And in some research groups, you can work virtually. In some, you can at least start reading about the research virtually. And if you don't find a group yet, or if you have a professor who says, oh, maybe you can think about joining me, what I would suggest you do is use the MSU Library, which you have access to. If you look up electronic journals, you'll see that we have access to major scientific journals. And so you can look up the professor through Google Scholar. Some of them are on Google Scholar, or you can look them up, their web pages or whatever, and learn a little bit about, you can see some of the papers, and you can look up those papers in the electronic journal section at the MSU Library virtually, and start reading about some of the work that they're doing. Don't be surprised if it's like a whole new vocabulary. It is anytime you go into a new field. And so certainly be prepared for that. But don't let the fact that, COVID's going on discourage you. If you really would like to pursue research, start investigating and start talking with the faculty. I've got a new student in my group, a new freshman who's already started my group, and others do as well. And so certainly there are opportunities. So Tammy, would you like to add on more in terms of kind of undergraduate research and any advice you have in terms of kind of having a successful research undergraduate experience?
It's kind of like any relationship. It's all about the communication, right? And having a very clear, open conversation with your mentor about expectations. And I think that the key to having successful research experiences is being with a group where you feel like you are welcome, trusted, and supported. And you shouldn't feel shy at all about asking directly for support or for assistance if you feel like you need some additional guidance. But it's, like I said, like any relationship, having some clear communication and letting folks know when you need help, being forthright with the mentor and letting them know if maybe the project isn't quite working out for you, because if you're feeling like you're a little lost, it could be for any of a number of reasons, and many of those are easily remedied. So it could be that you need additional guidance and support. It could be that maybe this isn't the right project for you, in which case you could be switched to a different project within the same lab, or maybe you're not feeling that this is the right lab environment for you. And you shouldn't, if you do run into that situation, I wouldn't say don't treat that like a failure. Treat that as new knowledge. So you've learned something about yourself. You've learned something about what it is that you want to do. And that's really important. Part of knowing what you want to do is recognizing when you found something that isn't a right fit, because now you need to start closing some doors to clear the path for the one that's right for you. And a lot of times I think mentors are extremely supportive of that whole process of students exploring and figuring out that this isn't a right fit. And I've counseled students that have left my lab and found other research opportunities. I've said to them, look, we don't do this kind of work, and if this is the thing that really excites you, you should go work for my colleague who's down the hall. Let's go talk to him right now. I'm going to introduce you. So it's not, I don't consider it a failure. I don't consider it something that the student should be embarrassed about. It's about discovery. So yeah, communication is the key.
Great, thank you, Tammy. I also want a couple of things, but Lynn Marie, I'm going to go to you in a minute, but I do want to mention that shortly we will talk about some external opportunities, and also there's a few other places on campus that you can look for opportunities, and we'll talk about those shortly as well. But Lynn Marie, what do you suggest for a successful undergraduate research experience?
Well, I would also sort of echo Tammy's comments about the communication side of things. And I think it's really important to ask questions throughout the process. They're going to be, and I think to have realistic expectations. So it's really exciting to go into a research lab, and I think, you know, when the experience is really new, there's a tendency to expect that, you know, every experiment you're going to do is going to work. And I think everybody who has done research will tell you that it seems like more often than not, experiments don't go the way that you've planned. The first time you do a new experiment, you know, you may get data, you may not get data, but you know, sort of each time you do the experiment, you're going to get better data, or you're going to figure out that there was something wrong about your experimental design and you have to back up, regroup, and go at it again. So I think being in a lab where you feel like you're supported will help you get through those periods of frustration. I mean, it's part of research. You shouldn't be discouraged because you know, it's those sort of unexpected results and working through problems that often yield the most interesting research results.
Great, thank you, Lynn Marie. Ben, do you have some strategies for success?
I wish making the transition from classes to research, there's a big transition. It's a very different activity. And when I started, I wish someone had told me, you know, give yourself the space to feel like you don't know what is going on. Allow yourself to just feel like you're completely failing, and don't get too upset with yourself. And do it every day. So like every day, feel okay with yourself, even though you may not have made much progress or it doesn't feel that way. And the progress may seem incremental, or maybe you'll even feel like sometimes you're getting worse at it and you're having no progress. But after 2-3 months, you'll look back and you'll be really surprised at how much you've progressed. So, you know, at the very local scale, you have no idea what's going on. It's very confusing. But then you spend all this time saying, I don't get it, I don't get it, I don't get it, I don't get it. And then after a few months, you may finally get something. And when you get it, you finally say, well, why didn't I get that? Why did that take me so long? That's so easy. You know, I totally understand it now. Why didn't I get that? And so it takes a while to get to that eureka moment. But then once you have it, you feel great. And then you move on and you start over. And so give yourself that regular practice and give yourself that space for not feeling like you're always just winning every day.
It's great, thanks. Steve?
I don't have a whole lot to add. I was going to step way back and say about pretty much everybody who does science, from faculty, but also probably the other researchers in the lab, the research fellows, the grad students, they all love to talk about their research. So one thing you can do, we talked about just going to talk to faculty, you don't say, well, what project can you give me? If you say, tell me a little bit about your research, it's really hard to get faculty to stop talking about their research. They're excited about it, but it's even true for the more junior people in the lab. I mean, how many if you find a graduate student or even like a junior or senior and you're just a freshman, say, so what do you do? They're probably actually really excited to tell you about what they do. And so that's a way to learn, is to let them talk about it and then ask some questions. And if it's just almost as a tool to learn what's going on. If they get excited telling you about what they're doing, and they're not just worried about, well, what can I give this person to do? They get excited about telling you, and then you can ask, okay, well, how might I fit in? It's just amazing how easy it is to get faculty to start talking about what they do, if you leave it open to them. and and science is one of the things. Science is all about like not making progress and failing a lot. It's one of the, I think, the misunderstandings about why we don't have a, you know, why are vaccines so hard? Why might it not be perfect, right? Science is is not that easy, and you have lots of and that's one of the things you learn. And then I think if you like it enough to keep doing it, it's because you like the process. You find it's fun to try to do it, and some people find it that part of failing all the time a lot is a little frustrating. They may go off and do something else, which is great. Like I said, a couple of my astrophysics undergrads are physicians now, so and we heard about people here who thought they were going to be physicians who are now chemists and plant scientists. So I think success, I'm not sure, success is sort of defined by yourself, right? So I'm not sure the people who started out doing astrophysics majors, if you had told them when they were sophomores that, well, they were going to decide they really wanted to go to medical school, I'm not sure that would have been defined as success at that time. But then they found a path they liked, and it obviously, and it worked for them. There's a lot of different paths, and part of being in college is finding your own way that way, in lots of different ways. But one of the real advantages of doing research, which is the main point here, is the way to do so outside of the classroom in a different way, in a sort of an authentic, it's not more authentic, it's just a different way in your classroom experience that gives you an insight into sort of how science works, which is not that there's an answer that the professor has for you. And that part's fun for us, that's why we're here. And you might find it's fun for you. And even if you find it's not what you want to do, you learned a lot along the way.
Great, thank you, Steve. So there are a lot of questions, and one thing I was going to mention is that what we will do is we're not going to be able to answer all the questions. I'm going to start trying to work through a few more of the questions that we have. We're not going to be able to answer all of them live here because we'll be wrapping up in about 15 minutes or so. But what we will do is we will send out a list of all the questions and answers to all of you who participated tonight. And so do expect those sometime probably next week, and we'll do our best to answer all of those questions. And actually also what we'll do is we will send you a list of a number of different sites where you can find research opportunities, more information about research opportunities. The College of Natural Sciences at MSU does have a website that talks about finding research opportunities, and there's a database of undergraduate research opportunities there. A lot of those opportunities, though, are ones that are off-site, and what you'll find is during the summers in particular, there are a lot of wonderful opportunities. This summer, some of them were halted, but I know places like Argonne National Laboratory they turned all their internships into virtual experiences. There's a lot of international opportunities, and there's a lot of opportunities staying on campus as well. So if you really start a project, you're really hooked on it, you know, most faculty would love to have you continue during the summer, and often they do have, you know, different ways to support you financially as well during those times. But, you know, lots of opportunities if you'd like to try something during the summers. There's National Science Foundation programs, Department of Energy programs, National Institute of Health programs, many, many different programs. And these are all paid programs. Many of them will cover your housing costs. Some of them will cover travel costs as well. And it's really an opportunity to see, you know, a little bit different opportunities, different people, different part of the country. Often there's also opportunities at companies as well. And so, you know, you can look for those opportunities. Some of them are going to be through the NatSci website. Some of them you'll hear about through your undergraduate advisor. And so, you know, again, we'll provide some of the links, but this is just kind of a start at thinking about different opportunities. But what I can tell you is, you know, MSU is one of the greatest research universities in the country. And I certainly encourage you to take advantage of the opportunities that you have here at MSU. You've got world-class faculty, some amazing research going on, and it's really, I encourage you to really consider some of the opportunities at MSU. We did have some questions from a student who is interested in pre-med and asked if they could do job shadowing. Of course you can do job shadowing. And Heidi, I don't know if Heidi or Mark, I don't know if you'd like to say a little bit more about job shadowing.
Sure, absolutely. So most all of our students that are interested in pre-health will do some kind of job shadowing. So we encourage you, there's a lot of different ways to get involved in that. It can be starting out with people that you know locally to where you are right now. So if you have your own physician that you work with, or you have a friend who has a parent that's a physician, that's a great way to start. But in the East Lansing area, once you're with us, we actually have two large hospital systems, the Sparrow Hospital System and the McLaren Hospital System. And so we have a lot of students that will get linked up through clubs that they may get interested in, through pre-health clubs, with physicians and PAs and dentists and optometrists, all different health careers in the area. They can do that. We also have an office on campus that is a service learning office. And so what they do is they set up volunteering opportunities in the community, including volunteering opportunities in health facilities. And so often students will start by volunteering in a hospital, and they will meet professionals through that enable them to job shadow in those career areas that they're interested in.
Great, thanks, Heidi. Another question was, when can you join a research group? Does it have to be at the beginning of the year? It does not at all have to be at the beginning of the year. You can decide in November that you want to start research in January, or you can decide in January you'd like to start in March. So you can certainly start research middle of the year. However, if you want to take it for course credit, then you do need to make arrangements prior. I do encourage all of you to not wait to do a research opportunity until your senior year. Some faculty would like to see students commit to a year in the lab. And often faculty like to see students spend about 5 to 10 hours. Some of the commitments may change a little bit. Lynn Marie, Ben, Steve, Tammy, I don't know what the hours, what you'd like to see undergraduates, how much time you'd like to see undergraduates spend in your labs.
I would say that 5 to 10 hours a week is a reasonable commitment, because it's sufficient time to make some progress on research during the academic year. I mean, I strongly encourage students who get involved in research during the academic year to consider staying on for the summer, because generally in the summer you'd be more focused on research and devote and commit more time.
Great, thank you. Ben, how about in math? What do you like to see?
I personally think that you can do about an hour to maybe 2 hours of productive research work a day before your brain's sort of shot and you're just staring at paper.
Coming from a mathematician.
Go for a hike.
Right, and then go for your hike and see if something pops in there.
So Steve, I'm sorry, I think you were trying to say
I think
Steve.
especially when you're just starting, 5 to 10 hours a week, because you're going to be doing other classes and other things. And I don't think anybody expects more. Now, maybe senior year, you're trying to wrap up some capstone project, and you're getting credit for this, and your schedule might not be quite, but that's maybe. But starting out, nobody's expecting you to just drop everything and show up in the lab. Everybody knows you have coursework and you're busy doing lots of other things.
Great, thank you. Tammy, how about in your area?
That time frame seems reasonable too. I think most of our undergrads work about 10 hours a week, so some less. It oscillates through the semester as well. When students have lots of exams due and they're writing papers, they don't show up very often, and then they come back after that wave has passed. But you had mentioned that not waiting, so I want to make sure that I emphasize that again, not waiting, because faculty would like to see undergrads in their labs for at least a year. In our experience, that first year really is a lot about the undergrads assisting what is currently ongoing, so they're learning the techniques and the methods and the tools. I feel like it takes about a year of being immersed in that lab culture before the undergrad is able to articulate a project of their own and take ownership of a new idea or new project that they can pursue on their own. So I want undergrads in the lab a minimum of 2 years. I'm really trying to find freshmen to work with this. So longer is better, because I think you learn so much more in that time and you can do so much more productive work.
Great, thank you. Lynn Marie.
Yeah, and I would just follow up on that. Undergraduates who start doing research during their first or second year, often by the time they're seniors, are functioning at the level of a first or second year graduate student. And I find that really exciting.
It is, and certainly there's a lot of undergraduate scholarship opportunities as well, national ones like the Barry Goldwater program, which is really very much based on not only being a great student, but also doing really pretty rigorous undergraduate research. And I've had 9 Barry Goldwaters in my group, in my research group, and these students, I could compare them very easily against some of my very best PhD students. They were amazing because they started so early in their undergraduate studies. Often, I had a former student who decided to go to medical school, but because he had so much undergraduate research experience, I was amazed. He said that he was selected, after he finished his MD, he was selected for a very prestigious residency because of the undergraduate research he had done in my group. And he could still talk about it. He had worked in my group for 4 years, and they were just really impressed that he was, and he had multiple publications as an undergraduate student, and so that really resonated with him, and so he got this amazing opportunity at Stanford. So, there's so many different reasons to engage in research. Well, our time is almost up, but what I would like to do is give everyone a chance to kind of give a few parting thoughts. And Heidi, would you like to start off anything on advising or research or whatever you'd like to make sure the students are aware of?
Absolutely. I would say that you hopefully most of you gone through orientation. If you haven't yet, you will, and you'll meet with your academic advisor. Don't be afraid to start with them. Just discussing how does it fit into your program, understanding where does it actually benefit you in credits, but also in experience, and where can it lead. Your academic advisor will be a relationship that you have throughout the 4 years, and they're going to help you all the way along in not only finding research, but also unpacking that experience and seeing how it can be beneficial, not only today in researching and learning and helping supporting your class, but tomorrow as you move into your career.
Great, thank you, Heidi. Mark, do you have any parting comments?
I just want to return to the thought that MSU is huge. There are tons of different opportunities, and it's a great place to find out what you really like.
Thank you. Steve, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, even with in my department, there's, like you said, everything from EFRA to telescopes. And so there's no guarantee. You should just try. One thing is just to try, including just emailing people and your advisor. And then there's no guarantee that group that you start with. Angela described a great example of somebody who started there and stayed there and loved it. But you do not. It's not a lifetime commitment. You should just start and try and give it a good shot. And then it's easier to move on, because then you can ask that faculty member, well, what else might you have? What else might I do? And it gets you involved. And it is a big place, right? But then it gives you a small home that helps make two of them work well together.
Great, thank you. How about you, Ben?
The fact that you're here tonight, you're already off to a great start. So keep up the good work, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Great, thank you. Lynn Marie?
So there may be some of you that have some very specific ideas about the kind of research that you're interested in. And maybe you've already looked around MSU and you haven't really found anything that aligns directly with what you think your current passion is. Don't let that discourage you from getting involved in research, because all research experience is good experience. We've talked about you can find out what you like, what you don't like, but you may also find out that what you thought you wanted to do isn't as interesting as what you end up doing with research. Or if you find that the research that you start in isn't exactly what you're looking for, there are many other opportunities that you can pursue.
Great, thank you. And you build so many skills, whether or not you decide you want to continue the rest of your career in whatever research area you pick, indeed, you can build a lot of very useful skills. So Tammy, how about you?
I think everybody has offered good advice. I would just add, don't be afraid to talk to faculty. Don't be afraid to talk to the people that work in their lab. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I think that you'll find as you start knocking on doors or sending those emails, for the most part, people are pretty friendly at MSU and have the undergrad's best interest at heart. So if you run into an unfriendly face, don't worry about it. Just put it behind you and move on, because it won't take long before you find a friendly one. So people really do want to help. So take advantage of that and don't be shy about asking questions. We love people that ask questions.
Well, we really want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. As I mentioned, we don't have a chance to get through all of the questions, but we will certainly answer them, and we will send you a link to so you can see all the answers, as well as some more information about where to find more information about research opportunities. We hope that you will get an early jump start. You've already gotten an early jump start by being here tonight. We certainly hope that you will reach out. We look forward to hearing you, and it's not just us, it's all the other hundreds of faculty within the College of Natural Science that are really excited to have you join us, whether it's remotely or in person. We are really excited to have you join us and look forward to hearing from you.